Open up your Bibles to Proverbs 19. Proverbs 19, verse 3. It's when Solomon observes that a man's folly brings his ways to ruin, but then his heart rages at the Lord. Proverbs 19, verse 3. I kind of like how one English text translates it, and it's that a person's own foolishness ruins their life, and then they get mad at God. But isn't that how we are sometimes? We make our mistakes, whether it's just our innocent mistakes, our failures, or even our sinful actions. And then as we begin to reap the consequences and our life feels ruined, then sometimes our next response is we get mad at God. Or we get mad at other people. I was visiting with someone at the back this evening about the concept of someone, maybe they're having a bad day, or someone else did something to them and they're already upset, and you're just the next human being that they come into contact with, and they take out their frustration, sometimes their actual anger on you. That's what happens sometimes, and we go our own way in life and we reap our own folly. But this evening's lesson, as a continuation of sorts, is about looking at ways to be cautioned away from those kind of problems in life. When we begin to experience what you might call relational wreckage. Ever been there too, where it might be a specific relationship, a marital relationship, a friendship, parent-child, you fill in the blank, and it feels like we've been in a wreck, or it's a shipwreck even. It's more of a shipwreck kind of situation. And you're wading through, I should say, the wreckage that's relational wreckage. Or it might be just in general in life. Sometimes we feel like it's not one relationship, it is just lots of different interpersonal matters that somehow pile up. Hopefully, I can't seem to do math, I can't say words, and I can't spell today. Okay? For the record, I do know how to spell bow. Okay? I don't know where my head went one way, my mouth went a different way. I don't know if I didn't want to say B-O in a sermon. I just said it now, and I didn't even include the W. But hopefully we'll get through this evening with our continued list, some more reasons. And I didn't get too many sour looks during the last month, when we went through some reasons from Proverbs why people may not like us when it is our fault. So we're going to do the second one tonight. Depending on how tonight goes, we might do another one here in another month or so. If you remember, this goes back to a book that's the 12 Essentials of Spiritual or Biblical, actually I think it's godly. See, I can't even remember book titles now either. Either way, it goes back to a book about 12 Essentials of Godly Success. And there were 40 in that one chapter. And so somebody tonight, as we were coming in, they said, okay, you had 7 last time. Do we have 33 this time? Well, I think I mentioned this, but I'm going to say this again. I took the 40 and I rearranged, I combined, I eliminated a few, I added a few of my own, I changed up some of the verses. So you don't know how many total there are on my list. We'll just say we're going to go and do 7 more this evening. We'll see what happens after that. So even then, even though it's not quite 33, we are going to have to buckle our seatbelts and move pretty quickly, but that's kind of the point of these. They're not meant to be dwelled on a lot. If you did, you might get too depressed if you did that. So maybe it's good that we hit one at a time and move on. But here's 7 more reasons why sometimes people don't like us, or why we struggle relationally from the wisdom of Proverbs. Keeping all of this in mind, that we want to be the best people we can be for God. If nothing else, we want to be the people who shine our light so that people see God's glory through the gospel lived out, and they sing His praises as they see us living and interacting with them. So stay in Proverbs and go from Proverbs 19:3 to Proverbs 29:11. More reasons. Number 1 for the evening, it might be because I am too blunt. Too blunt. We say things like, I'm just telling the truth. Or Sometimes we give exemptions to those that are on the older side. I'm not going to even start naming ages, but the elderly side of things, or sometimes it is the very young. And he's just a kid, and whether that means he's 5 or he's 15 or 25, or maybe as we get older, sometimes we either give ourselves or other people give us almost this exemption of, it's okay, you've lost your filter, it's okay. And I realize sometimes there are actual chemical imbalances, and we're not trying to get into any of that tonight or get into some of the details of what sometimes happens as far as our actual mental and physical health. That's another discussion. But sometimes we use things like honesty, our age, what we've been through in life to give full vent. What is it that Proverbs 29:11 says? Look at it with me. Proverbs 29:11 says, "A fool gives full vent to his spirits, but a wise man quietly holds it back." This one is comparable to another one that has already been on the list about people knowing everything, all your opinion on everything. This is more about people knowing your feelings about everything. This is when I say something and I didn't have to say it. Isn't there a saying about that? Well, just because it's true doesn't mean that it's lying to withhold it in certain circumstances. I mean, it's kind of the old when the husband asks the wife what he thinks of a certain piece of apparel, right? That maybe sometimes you should just say no comment, okay, guys? That you don't want to lie, but you don't want to, okay? And I just got myself in water, deep water here tonight. We're barely in. We're just on number 1, right? But there is a difference between just honesty and being hurtful. And sure, it may be that what you're saying, what we're saying, I'm trying to be careful tonight, this isn't about pointing fingers, is true. But that doesn't mean that it isn't hurtful too. And this doesn't mean that there's not a place to even provide corrective instruction or where we're called at times to hold each other accountable as Christians. I get that. But this is more about just saying things that because we're feeling it, because we want to know that we think it's true and we want to express ourselves. And some of this is there is a time, there is a place. It might even be when I put person down there, I'm thinking here that it may be something that needs to be said to someone, but maybe I'm not the best person because I don't know them well enough or I am too close to the situation. It might come better from somebody else. Or sometimes it's when we're venting, go back to Proverbs 29:11, and there is a healthy place for venting. And that might be with someone where we sit down with someone like Rod or a counselor, and we just kind of let it all out. But that might not always be the best time. Here at the back of the auditorium on a Sunday night might not be the best time to just let everything out, all of your problems, all of your emotions, and just vent and say whatever comes to mind and heart, okay? I'm not saying don't share your problems and ask for prayer requests from your brothers and sisters, but sometimes we go too far. We're a little too blunt when we don't quietly hold some things back. Are you too blunt? Here's the second one. Do you enjoy making fun of other people? Look at Proverbs 17, verse 5. About 10 chapters back. This one is especially true when it comes to those that are less fortunate, those that are the vulnerable in life because of their circumstances, because of their health. Proverbs 17, verse 5. This is one of the strongest statements in all of Proverbs. Whoever mocks the poor. And again, I think you can take that and apply that principle. Whoever makes fun of those who have fallen into bad financial situations, those that are handicapped, whatever it is, whoever mocks them insults his maker. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. One of the things you can ask yourself is, would I be laughing if they were standing right there and not standing over there? Now, sometimes that's the point. Sometimes we do it to their face, and that's the point. And as I reflected on this one, I thought about, and I don't have this one memorized. Maybe it's a good thing I don't have the country song memorized, but I had most of the hymn memorized this morning, I think. But I thought about the old Tim McGraw song when he says, we used to chase that boy home from school. We called him freckled face, red-headed fool. He was different. He wasn't cool like me. Sticks and stones didn't break any bones, but we never left well enough alone. Then one day he ran away from home, you see. And I passed him as he walked away, and in his eyes I heard him say, and then it's the repeated chorus of one of these days, you're going to love me. You're going to sit down by yourself and think about all the times you pushed and shoved me. And one of these days, you're going to sigh a little, maybe even cry a little, but one of these days, you're going to love me. And sometimes this happens, and we just kind of get caught up in the moment. Sometimes I also realize that there can be a fine line between laughing with someone. Maybe it is a funny situation. We see the comedy. Sometimes people heal that way, and sometimes we can do that with them, but what's the other side of that fine line? It's not laughing with them or about their situation, but laughing what? At them. Are you too blunt? Do you enjoy making fun of? Not making fun with, making fun of other people. And I'll tell you, as someone who won, as my son knows, the International 2018 Sarcasm Championship of the World, sometimes that's a struggle for some of us because we're just being sarcastic. We're just trying to lighten the mood. And I do wear a pretty big size boot tonight. And what is it the Andrew Griffith always asks? How do I get that big foot in my mouth? Well, it happens. If people don't like you, it might be because you make fun of them. Or you're just that type of person. It's not always them. People may not want to be around someone like that. Here's the third one this evening. Are you two-faced? Some of us wear two masks. I say some of us, I'm mainly just thinking about humanity. It's almost like there's a closet at home and you've got two plus, maybe more than two, but at least two different masks that you have. One is more like a mirror that is honest and transparent. It is who you really are on the inside. The other is smoothed up and cleaned up, almost like social media camera filters, where that's not what you really look like, is it? Maybe we've gone far beyond just wearing makeup now, right? We've got cameras that do the work for us. Some of us wear more than one mask. And sometimes it's who we're with, sometimes it's where we are. Sunday morning, we've got a mask. Monday afternoon at work or school or in the quiet of our living room, we may be all smiles and happy and how you doing and great to see you and I'm blessed on Sunday morning, and by Monday afternoon in the living room chair, we are as sour and mean, whether we're just mean or we're yelling or whatever at our kids or the TV or the dog, you name it. Are you two-faced? Look at Proverbs chapter 10, verse 18. I think about sometimes when someone may come up to you and say, did you say this? I heard you said this. You say, no, that wasn't me. I didn't say that. Somebody made that up. Maybe they did. Maybe they did. Proverbs 10:18 says, the one who conceals hatred has lying lips, and whoever utters slander is a fool. And then if you flip over to Proverbs 26, there's a lengthier reading here, but it's appropriate. Look at Proverbs 26, start at verse 23. Proverbs 26, verse 23. Or so far, we're tracking in sync with the screen, I think. Proverbs 26, verse 23. It says, the words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the body. And you can think of that one as they're easy to listen to, or that you can also think about it as the impact they make. They go down all the way into the deepest part of you. Like the glaze covering an earthen vessel. You take an old clay pot, but you can put a pretty glaze on it, and it looks like something entirely more valuable and more precious than it really is on the inside. He says, just like that, in verse 24, it is 23. I said start at 23, and I started at 22. If you're lost with me. All right, 23 goes on to say that the fervent lips with an evil heart are like that glaze. Or you might even think of smooth lips, smooth words. Whoever, verse 24, I think we're right now, Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips. He's pretending. And then he says, and he harbors deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously, believe him not. Don't listen. Don't believe it. Though his hatred be covered with deception, verse 26 says, his wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. Or one of these days, it's going to go public. And that's the thing. If you live long enough and you tell enough different things and you act different with different people long enough, the two-facedness comes out and people start realizing and catching on. And then you wonder why they don't want to be with you, around you, or why they don't like you much. If you are two-faced. There's another one. What if people can't depend on you? What if they, when you sign up for something, we can make it real personal here this evening. You sign up for something to volunteer to do something with the church. If somebody else walks by the sign-up sheet and they see your name on there, are they relieved that, they're going to help? Or is it more concerned that, they signed up, but they might not even be there? I know things happen, and we miss appointments sometimes, and we've got good reasons. But if you make a habit of missing appointments and deadlines that are always late and volunteering that never really gets done, then it can become a problem. So here's Proverbs 10, verse 26. This is one of those feel-good verses. What do we call them? Refrigerator verses? Proverbs 10:26 says, like vinegar to the teeth. Now, there's going to be someone, so I'm not going to do it tonight, but how many of you like to drink vinegar? I know there's at least somebody here maybe tonight. We got one that, I know some people take a teaspoon or maybe even a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and things, and we put it in things, but most of us don't walk over and pick up a big fresh glass of pure vinegar and just turn it up. I mean, it's like sand in your eyes at the beach, or it's the proverbial Lego on the carpet you step on. It's vinegar to the teeth, or what does he go on to say? Smoke in your eyes. Who likes that? You stand a little too close to the campfire. Like when we go out to the Kent farm, we might do that again this fall or something. You get a little too close and you get a little too much smoke in your eyes. Does that feel good? He says, so is the sluggard to those who send him. You send somebody to do a job and you expect them to do the job, right? But the sluggard, the lazy, that's what it feels like. And you can flip this one. This is one of the ones you can easily flip it with. How does it make you feel when somebody drops the ball on something that you've had them taking care of? Especially when it's something that becomes a part of a pattern. And then you do have Proverbs 18:9, which it's less emotional, but in some ways it's more intense, because it says that the person who's not dependable, the sluggard, is a brother to the one who destroys. In other words, that if they can't depend on you, you're just like someone who goes around and is destructive. Sometimes you might be destructive. Sometimes things fall apart. Things are not what they should be. They're not up to the standards. You think about it even, say, in a construction setting. If you're on a construction job site and later the wall collapses on someone because you weren't there when you were supposed to be to do your job. Can people depend on you? It's like when you're in the canoe and you're not rowing on your side. Of course, the joke is that then you just end up going in circles, right? One person's rowing on one side and you're not. But sooner or later, that's when the other people in the boat stop on the shore and do what? You got to get out. Either tow your load or go. Can people depend on you? If they can't depend on you, they might not like you. Here's another one along the same lines. If you can't keep a secret. If you can't keep things confidential. Let's look at Proverbs 11, verse 13. Might be a page or so over from where we were in chapter 10. Proverbs 11, verse 13 says, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. Now, once again, we might have to throw in a caveat here and say This does not mean that you cover up people's sins that need to be exposed. I mean, even just recently, I can almost count on one hand the stories that have come out of congregations that for a time were covering up horrible things that needed to be brought to the light. That doesn't mean we do that or we enable people by keeping their secret sins. But it does mean that in general, if somebody tells you something, you don't spread it around. And they shouldn't have to say, this is between you and me. I mean, sometimes they do, and that's helpful. Sometimes to know, okay, this for sure is something they don't want broadcasted yet. It may even be good news that they're not ready for other people to know about. And once more, there are some settings that are extremely that way. Maybe it is you're in a counseling, a therapy setting, or as an elder or a minister. But this principle works for all of us. Nothing erodes trust more than being someone that can't keep confidential information confidential. Can they trust you to keep a secret? If they can't, for one, what? Moving forward, they're not likely to tell you much, are they? And you miss out. I don't just mean you miss out in the sense of you don't get to hear stuff before other people or you don't get the juicy secrets. I mean you miss out on the depth of a relationship. Because if things stay surface where it's just small talk and the weather in a friendship or in a marriage, you're missing out on the depth of intimacy that's possible. It's almost like the one from before about being a loner and we don't want the responsibility. This one is kind of where we are irresponsible with the truth and with information so that we can't be trusted. You're someone who's too blunt, makes fun of other people, tracking. Someone who people get two-faced, someone who, I got to try to remember them all myself now, someone that people can't depend on, or then I think this is number 5, that can't keep a secret. So, number 6, are you someone that's selfish? I almost put too selfish because it is so easy for us to be self-centered and to think of ourselves first. But we are called as Christians to seek Jesus and then to seek the needs of other people alongside ourselves. We're never called to totally disregard our own needs and our own wants and preferences, but to at least put those alongside and not just think of our own circle. And we're about to make a decision, we're about to do something or say something, not just how will this affect me and maybe my family, let's say in a congregational setting, what's this going to do for the rest of the church? Is this just going to hurt my reputation or is this going to hurt the reputation of other people? You keep asking those questions, and it helps us. So we were in Proverbs 10, let's go to Proverbs 11 again. 11:26, or I guess we were just in 11, weren't we? Several of these tonight are from chapter 11, more than one. But in 11:26, he says this. Now, as we read this, keep in mind, this is a different economic situation. This is where the poor are dependent in a more absolute way on the rich than even in our setting today. And the access that the poor had to things like grain was very, very limited. And so he says this, the people curse him who holds back grain. You talk about not liking somebody. They curse this type of person. But a blessing is on the head of him who sells it. I appreciate the way one man put it, that God does not ask, let's say, business owners to have business without a profit. I mean, you wouldn't be in business very long. And then where would you go to get things? But he does require, or he does, let's say, frown on, I think it's how the quote went, if I can get it right, on those who do business without compassion. And that's what this is about. Flip over with me to Proverbs 23, verses 6 and 7. Proverbs 23, 6 and 7. This one sounds like where you go over to someone's house, maybe, or you go out to eat with them today, and it's one of those where maybe they say something like, just get whatever you want, order whatever you want. Been there? And maybe there's some pricey things on the menu. And sometimes, of course, on the other side of it, you don't want to be greedy or selfish and take advantage, and you don't know what their bank account looks like. But this is where they say that, or to make it more personal, we say that, but on the inside, we're sitting over there calculating. Okay, well, I hope they don't order the $50 ribeye. Maybe they'll just get the $15.99 catfish or something. We say it, but on the inside, we're still kind of greedy and selfish. Proverbs 23, verse 6 says, "Do not eat the bread of a man who is stingy. Do not desire his delicacies, for he is like one who is inwardly calculating." Or it could even be translated as, he's always thinking about how much stuff costs. He says, don't even eat his bread, because he says, eat and drink, but his heart is not with you. You see that? Now, there's more to this than just sitting down at a nice restaurant, but it is that get whatever you want, but his heart's not in his word. That's just one example from even this proverb of how sometimes we even want to be seen. Maybe this goes back to the two-faced, right? We want to be seen as giving and generous, but we're still holding on to a selfishness on the inside. It's when I'm always asking, what's in it for me? That'd be another side of this. The greedy side of selfishness might be, what's it going to cost me? This one is, what's in it for me? If I'm going to be a part of this, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to go there, what am I going to get out of it? And as we already said, it is not inherently wrong to ask this question. It's more about how much, and if it's really the only question we ask, isn't it? And I was borrowing earlier from the wording in Philippians 2, where Paul says, don't only think of your own interest, but look out for the interest of others. And that's in the same setting when he says, you do what Jesus did. You have the attitude of Jesus in Philippians 2:5. And 5 through 11 shows you what that looks like. It's this call to love that does not seek its own in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 5. Sometimes people may not like me because nobody likes somebody who's selfish. Now, there is some irony there, right? That if I'm selfish, then I'm really not going to like somebody else who's selfish. But if I'm selfish, and let's say overly selfish, just to make it a little easier to swallow this evening, people may not like me. Here's the last one of the evening. And I saved this one for last because it's almost like the worst and best for last. If I'm unforgiving. Unforgiving. If I have an unforgiving attitude. When was the last time, and you can make your way to Proverbs 10:12, but when was the last time I said those words? I forgive you. Proverbs 10, verse 12, says this about our heart. It says, hatred stirs up strife, but love, back to that love covers all offenses. This one also is not one where we just ignore everything that happens to us. Someone once said that forgiveness doesn't mean, or having a forgiving attitude doesn't mean you ignore all offense. It means you don't chain yourself to other people or the past. A forgiving attitude doesn't mean you overlook whatever happens to you, period. It means you don't chain yourself to that person or the past. And then a few pages over in Proverbs 19:11, and some of us in here might remember that reference for other reasons, a certain firearm that came out in 1911. But in Proverbs 19:11, he says, good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. Or that glory there, it may be Solomon's way of saying, one of the ways that you will earn other people's respect, they're going to, in that way, give you glory or give you respect, is when you're willing to forgive them or in general. You are a forgiving person. That's the kind of person people look up to and want to emulate. But if the opposite of true is true of me, then they may not even like. Now, it is in the Proverbs, it's in Proverbs 25, when we first read about the idea of not repaying evil for evil, but instead putting coals of fire on our enemies' heads. And there have been a lot of different ideas over the centuries as to what that means. Does it mean that you hurt them with kindness? What does that look like? I tend to prefer the option that says that you're not trying to hurt them at all, but it's as if you're trying to melt through their hard exterior with your kindness. Break down the wall of strife and disagreement and past hurts. And that's the one, it's on your handout, I believe, that's quoted by the Apostle Paul in Romans 12, 19 through 21, from Proverbs 25, 21, and 22, specifically to Christians. Am I someone that's willing to let things go? I asked him this morning if it was quotable, and he's not here this evening, so I'm not going to name his name. Don't go trying to figure out who's normally here on Sunday evening and who's not this evening, okay? People might not like you doing that. But in class this morning over the fellowship hall, we were talking about forgiveness and why we don't forgive people, why we're so unwilling to let it go. And one of the gentlemen in there said it's because we have our little feelings. And I thought there's a lot of truth to that. And I told him, I was like, you're stealing my sermon, but I'm going to have to steal that quote for the sermon tonight. This is what it looks like for us, or at least this is how it's supposed to be, isn't it? That the forgiven are forgiving. Isn't that from texts like Ephesians 4:32 or Colossians 3:13? You can put 12 in there too. I was trying to squeeze it in. That those of us who've been forgiven by God through Christ are to learn to put up with other people. That's what Colossians 3:13 said. You bear with one another. You put up with them. Of course, you might keep in mind good sense from Proverbs 19 that they're having to put up with me and my quirks and my harsh tone, maybe when I don't even realize it. And that's the thing. There are some of those things that this is how I operate, and I think it's based on my understanding of Scripture, it's a healthy way, is if it's something like that, somebody just kind of says hello to you and it's a little coarse, I don't even think about that later. Like, you just let that go. All right. Now, if it's something bigger, you may need to do Matthew 18 and go to them and talk it out. Or if you've done something to them, you may need to do Matthew 5 and go to them. And instead of saying, I forgive you, you may need to say, will you forgive me? And it takes more fingers, but you get it, right? When was the last time I said that? When was the last time I went to somebody else and said, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? Because the forgiven are supposed to be forgive. Here are some more reasons for your Sunday evening why we may struggle sometimes. I remind you this evening of the idea that wise living and wise relating are all a part of these proverbs, these wisdom statements from God. And that our ultimate goals in life are to be to love God and love people. I don't know of a better way. I should hit some more buttons. Okay. I don't know of a better way. There are other ways, but I don't know of a better way to wrap up what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a good husband, good wife, to be a good minister, shepherd, deacon, whatever it is, than those two simple ideas. Love people because you love God. And then this week, let's go home and pray about it, think about it, and seek God's help to do better at it. At not being someone people don't like, but being one that is able to work with people. We're going to sing an invitation song now, and I appreciate Chance and his leading today. And it's an invitation, I guess, tonight to say if you need prayers to be more likable. How about that for a sermon invitation? But when it comes to us as Christians, our brothers and sisters, and sometimes we don't want to be with certain people. Sometimes we don't want to even go to worship because so-and-so is going to be there. Sometimes people say things, the proverbial, well, there's a bunch of hypocrites up there, right? But I sometimes go back to that question someone raised years ago. If I don't want to be around other Christians in this life, then assuming both of us, all of us make it, what am I going to do in the next life when I'm spending eternity? Not just an hour or so, a few hours a week. Let's be thankful for the blood of Jesus that washes away our sins and the love of God that changes human hearts as we stand and sing together.